I was trying to think, what did I say that could actually be helpful or useful to you in the future? And I thought I'd perhaps tell the story of how I sort of came to be here. How did some of these things happen? And maybe there's some lessons there, because I often find myself wondering, how did this happen? So when I was young, I didn't really know what I was going to do when I got older. But then eventually I thought that the idea of inventing things would be really cool. The reason I thought that was because I read a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, which said that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that's really true. If you go back, say 300 years, the things that we take for granted today would be you'd be burned at the stake for. You know, being able to fly, that's crazy. Being able to see over long distances, being able to communicate, having effectively, with the internet, a group mind of sorts, and having access to all the world's information instantly from almost anywhere on the earth. This is stuff that really would be magic, or would be considered magic in times past. In fact, I think it actually goes beyond that, because there are many things that we take for granted today that weren't even imagined in times past. They weren't even in the realm of magic. So it actually goes beyond that. So I thought, well, you know, if I can do some of those things, basically if I can advance technology, then that's like magic, and that would be really cool. And I also had sort of a slight existential crisis, because I was trying to figure out what does it all mean? Like, what's the purpose of things? And I came to the conclusion that if we can advance the knowledge of the world, if we can do things that expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we're better able to ask the right questions and become more enlightened, and that's really the only way forward. So I studied physics and business, because I figured in order to do a lot of these things, you need to know how the universe works, and you need to know how the economy works, and you also need to be able to bring a lot of people together to work with you to create something, because it's very difficult to do something as an individual if it's a significant technology. I originally came out to California to try to figure out how to improve the energy density of electric vehicles, basically to try to figure out if there was an advanced capacitor that could serve as an alternative to batteries. And that was in '95, and that's also when the internet started to happen. And I thought, well, I can either pursue this technology where success may not be one of the possible outcomes, which is always tricky, or participate in the internet and be part of it. So I decided to drop out. Did some internet stuff, one of which was PayPal. And I think maybe it's helpful to say one of the things that was important then in the creation of PayPal was kind of how it started, because the initial thought with PayPal was to create an agglomeration of financial services. So to have one place where all of your financial services needs would be seamlessly integrated and work smoothly. And then we had like a little feature which was to do email payments. And whenever we'd show the system off to someone, we'd show the hard part, which was the agglomeration of financial services, which was quite difficult to put together. Nobody was interested. Then we'd show people email payments, which was actually quite easy, and everybody was interested. So I think it's important to take feedback from your environment. You know, you want to be as closed loop as possible. So we focused on email payments and really try to make that work, and that's what really got things to take off. But if we hadn't responded to what people said, then we probably would not have been successful. So it's important to look for things like that and focus on them when you see them, and correct your prior assumptions. Going from PayPal, what are some of the other problems that are likely to most affect the future of humanity? It really wasn't from the perspective of what's the rank-ordered best way to make money, which is okay, but what I think is going to most affect the future of humanity. So I think the biggest terrestrial problem we've got is sustainable energy, but the production and consumption of energy in a sustainable manner. If we don't solve that this century, we're in deep trouble. And then the other one being the extension of life beyond Earth to make life multiplanetary. So that's the basis for, the latter is the basis for SpaceX, and the former is the basis for Tesla and Solar City. And when I started SpaceX, initially I thought that, well, there's no way one could possibly start a rocket company. I wasn't that crazy. But then I thought, well, what is a way to increase NASA's budget? That was actually my initial goal. So I thought, well, if we can do a low-cost mission to Mars, something called Mars Oasis, which would land seeds with seeds and dehydrated nutrient gel, and you hydrate them upon landing, and then you'd have this great sort of money shot of green plants on a red background. And the public tends to respond to precedents and superlatives, and this would be the first life on Mars, the furthest that life's ever traveled, as far as we know. And I thought, well, that would get people really excited, and therefore increase NASA's budget. So obviously the financial outcome from such a mission would probably be zero. So anything better than that was on the upside. So I actually went to Russia 3 times to look at buying a refurbished ICBM, because that was the best deal. And I can tell you it was very weird going there in late 2001, 2002, going to the Russian rocket forces and saying, I'd like to buy 2 of your biggest rockets, but you can keep the nuke. That's a lot more. That was 10 years ago, I guess, so they thought I was crazy. But I did have money, so that was okay. After making several trips to Russia, I came to the conclusion that actually my initial impression was wrong about, because my initial thought was, well, that there's not enough will to explore and expand beyond Earth and have a Mars base and that kind of thing. But I came to the conclusion that was wrong. In fact, there's plenty of will, particularly in the United States, because the United States is a nation of explorers, of people who came here from other parts of the world. I think the United States is really a distillation of the spirit of human exploration. But if people think it's impossible, then, or it's going to completely break the federal budget, then they're not going to do it. So after my 3rd trip, I said, okay, well, what we really need to do here is try to solve the space transport problem, and started SpaceX. And this was against the advice of pretty much everyone I talked to. One friend made me sit down and watch a bunch of videos of rockets blowing up. Let me tell you, he wasn't far wrong. It was tough going there in the beginning, because I'd never built anything physical. I mean, I'd built like little model rockets as a kid and that kind of thing, but I'd never had a company that built anything physical. So I had to kind of figure out how to do all these things and bring together the right team of people. And so we did all that and then failed 3 times. It was tough going. Because the thing about a rocket is that the passing grade is 100%. And you don't get to actually test the rocket in the real environment that it's going to be in. So I think the best analogy for rocket engineering is like, if you want to create a really complicated bit of software, you can't run the software as an integrated whole, and you can't run it on the computer it's intended to run on. But the first time you put it all together and run it on that computer, it must run with no bugs. That's basically the essence of it. So we missed the mark there. The first launch, I was picking up bits of rocket near the launch site. It was a bit sad, but we learned with each successive flight, and were able to, eventually with the 4th flight in 2008, reach orbit, and that was also with the last bit of money that we had. Thank goodness that happened. I think the saying is 4th time's the charm. So we got the Falcon 1 to orbit, and then began to scale that up to the Falcon 9, which is about an order of magnitude more thrust. It's around 1 million pounds of thrust, and we managed to get that to orbit, and then developed a Dragon spacecraft, which recently was able to dock and return to Earth from the space station. That was a white-knuckled event. So yeah, it's a huge relief. Still can't quite believe it actually happened. But there's a lot more that must happen beyond this in order for humanity to become a spacefaring civilization, ultimately a multi-planet species. And that's something I think it's vitally important, and I hope that some of you will participate in that, either at SpaceX or at other companies, because it's just really one of the the most important things for the preservation and extension of consciousness. I mean, it's worth noting, as I'm sure people are aware, that the Earth has been around for 4 billion years, and the civilization, at least the one that's having right now, has been around for 10,000 years. That's being generous. And I think I'm actually fairly optimistic about the future of Earth. So I don't want people to have the wrong impression that I think we're going to die. I think things will most likely be okay for a long time on Earth. I'm not for sure.
Em đến nhẹ nhàng như cách em đi qua cái khẳng lãng mạn như thi ca, khiến anh chẳng nhớ được gì cả, chỉ chút vừa vã anh ghi. Và anh không biết được là đôi mình còn gần bên nhau bao lâu nữa. Nhiều lúc anh nghĩ hay thôi mình có lẽ là đừng yêu nhau nữa, vì cãi vã nhiều quá anh mệt lắm, chia tay nhiều quá anh mệt lắm. Tất cả ở em đều mệt lắm, nhưng rồi thời gian cũng hết năm. Em thì vẫn ở đó, vẫn nắm chặt tay, vẫn kể môi sát môi. Anh thì vẫn như vậy, vẫn nghệ sĩ nghèo chỉ có lời hát thôi. Em à, người ta mất nhau trong 2 tuần và ta xa nhau cũng 2 lần. Anh không có phải thằng khờ, cũng biết trái tim đâu đó đã phai dần. Phải cần một sự liều lĩnh để thấy mình còn luyến thương nữa không. Mình sống với nhau như vợ chồng, nhưng tình thế này thì chưa giống. Bài nhạc anh viết vẫn chưa xong, liệu rằng ngày đó có
Buồn dẫu không cách nào mang nắng về đêm đông, cũng không hái được sao trên trời kia đem xuống. Nhưng sau này có thể đưa em giữ hộ tiền lương, sau này có thể làm việc nhà nếu em lười. Nhân gian thường nói không tồn tại thiên đường, chắc do họ chưa từng nhìn thấy lúc em cười. Ấm áp tỏa sáng tựa vầng thái dương, kéo anh chuyển động tinh tiến ở xung quanh. Hoài ngày hạnh phúc nhất mà anh âm thầm mãi ước, ngày ta đứng trước linh mục và cùng sánh vai lại. Thêm lần nữa tuyên bố nhẹ, em về khuyên bố mẹ kén rể đi anh đến tuyển ngay. Dù ít tin tưởng vào duyên số, nhưng nếu em cho số đảm bảo mình nên duyên đấy. Từ khi gặp em Google hết tác dụng, bởi em là tất cả những gì anh cần tìm, giống một kho báu để ngăn người khác bước tới. Đối đầu thế giới anh cũng sẵn sàng cân tim, ghét phải lặng im coi em như cô bạn. Nỗi nhớ đong đầy bao giờ mới khô cạn, khoảnh khắc bên nhau thời gian nhưng ngừng trôi, vì em sở hữu sự hấp dẫn vô hạn. Yêu đơn phương cảm giác khó đọc tên, mọi thứ mù mịt giống như đứng trước bão. Mãi hy vọng chờ đợi ngóng trông đến ngày nụ hôn đó sẽ một lần được trao. Hương thơm ngọt ngào vương trên mái tóc em, gây nghiện cực mạnh anh ngày đêm ước áo. Quỳnh là loài hoa đẹp nhất trong bóng đêm, cuộc đời này u tối đang cần em bước vào. Đưa cho anh cái bản đồ vì anh sắp lạc bên trong đôi mắt kia. Hãy đưa cho anh cuốn từ điển vì cảm xúc này anh không thể cắt nghĩa. Chuẩn bị đưa anh vì say anh thường hãy nhắc về em, mong khỏa lấp những u tối. Khoảnh khắc về đêm nghe lại bài ca ngày xưa cũ, ta hát về nhau nhớ những giấc mơ ta từng ước. To tát về sau và đó là khi mà anh dần lụy là không làm chủ chính mình. Thấy không gian trở nên tồi tệ, mọi thứ bao phủ chính mình. Em đâu còn như điều anh mơ, anh cũng tự nhủ chính mình. Nhưng mà thôi em, nào ai giỏi mà đủ tính tình, chẳng thể vươn tới được cảnh cao dù anh có nhã ý trèo. Trong cơn say mọi thứ cuồng quay anh trở thành gã chí phèo. Yêu chân thành là không thay lòng dù em có như thị nở. Ý anh là em như cô tấm nhìn em như thị nở. Đêm vắng nàng ngón tay xám vàng vì đốt cả bao thuốc lá. Căn phòng chung khi xưa nồng ấm bây giờ sao bút giá. Một thói xấu mà anh đã quen khi em không ở bên lâu. Anh từng ngồi trong một góc tối nhậu suốt cả đêm thâu. Em mang con tim anh đi đâu, khiến anh mù quáng vẫn cố sáng mỗi khi đau. Em mang con tim anh đi đâu, điều gì choáng váng để xứng đáng ướt mi nhau. Em mang con tim anh đi đâu, khiến anh mù